welcome everybody to our webinar, How CRM Can Change an Industry with a Focus on Printing. I'd like to thank everybody who's joining us today. If you have questions during this webinar, please just put them in the question box and we will answer them either we'll answer them during it if it's appropriate or at the end, depending. Okay, so this is brought to you by SalesPOP online sales magazine. That's salespop.pipelinersales.com. If you haven't checked it out, I would recommend that you do. Most of the panelists today have contributed to it. It is the best and brightest in sales and sales thought leadership, so I would recommend that you check it out. Also brought to you by Pipeliner CRM, the world's most visual CRM. Again, if you haven't experienced it, I would suggest you take a free download, free download trial and see for yourself what everybody's talking about and how visual Pipeliner CRM really is and what difference it can make to your organization. Okay, I'm delighted to welcome a really high-powered panel today of experts who are going to talk about CRM with particular emphasis on how it can help in the printing industry, so how it can help change an industry with the focus on printing. And I'm going to let these fine gentlemen introduce themselves. So maybe Rich Bohn, if you would like to start off and give us a little bit of background on yourself.
Well, I was a salesman for 20 years in selling big ticket, high tech, long bicycle stuff. And that led to a fascination with CRM. And then I made a transition to becoming an independent CRM analyst. And I've been doing that for the last, if you can believe it, 30 years.
Oh, excellent, Rich. And Phillip Crum joining us from Dallas today.
Yes, sir. Thank you, John. I think I'm the only one that sent in a profile picture that was 20 years old or more. So just picture me with silver hair there, and we'll be in good shape. I've been in the Dallas, Texas area for most of my life, and I've worked for a SalesPOP printing franchise here for the last 24 years. And when I found them, and when we found each other, they were number 800 on a list of 800 SalesPOP franchises. And now we're at the number 5 spot on that same list. So we've done very well and seen a lot of changes from just plain old offset to a whole lot of other marketing services that we now offer. So that's my story.
Okay, and finally, but last but not least, Craig Woirhaye, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hi, John. Thanks for having me here today. Well, I guess my story starts back in 1981 when I wrote my first computer program, and I actually kind of worked my way up through the technology ranks before getting into CRM. I've worked in accounting, I've worked with ERP systems, and then in the mid to late 1980s, I got into the CRM consulting space, became a partner in a fairly large CRM consulting firm. From there, became a practice director of CRM strategy consulting, and from there, vice president of business development, and eventually now, own my own firm, helping folks devise and implement growth strategies. And CRM, of course, is a big part of all of that. So, coming Excellent. To you from the heart of the USA.
Yeah, absolutely. You're in Missouri today, I think. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, good. All right, before we launch into the discussion itself, I just want to do a very quick poll just to get an idea of our audience and what role they fulfill. So I'm just going to launch this poll really quickly here. And so if you listeners, if you could just quickly fill out the poll here and just let us know what your role is, it would help us enormously. Thank you. All right. Okay, and as I said, today we're going to talk about CRM and how it can really impact an industry with a particular focus on the printing industry. Because as we've seen, CRM can sometimes have different impacts on different industries, can be used in different ways. And so it'll be interesting to see from our panelists today, given their wide-ranging background, what their thoughts on this subject are. Okay, looks like we have pretty much everybody voted, so I'm going to close the poll, share the results really quickly. We have 50% executives, perfect salesperson, sales leaders. Okay, excellent. Good cross section today. All right, so let's get back to the discussion itself. Everybody can see my screen, I hope. So let's go straight into the first question, and maybe I'll start off with you, Phillip. What is it about printing sales in particular that really lends itself to leveraging a CRM?
How did I know you were going to pick on the Cowboys fan, first off? Well, I think, first of all, from a sales point of view, everybody has a printer. Mm-hmm. Every prospect out there already has a printer, which means that the sales cycle that you run into could be anywhere from a few days, depending on their current relationship, to a year or two, depending on how long you want to follow through with somebody. So there tends to be a lengthier sales cycle, and that means that long-term print accounts, if you want an account that's going to be with you quite a while, and that's obviously what we're all after, they have everything to do with a solid can-do relationship, attitude from the sales rep. And that relationship needs to begin now, the moment that you meet them, not in a year or 6 months from now, the week they place their first order. So in order to manage those relationships in an electronic area that demands linked databases for marketing purposes, you have to have some electronic way to keep track of all of that that's accessible. And I'm sure we're probably going to jump into that more later, but the bottom line is, what is there about printing sales that lends itself to using a CRM is that you need it to manage these long-term relationships.
Yeah, and what would you add to that, Rich?
Well, I think about my own business. In the first 10 years, I was a fairly large consumer of printing services. We mailed a monthly newsletter. We mailed a large catalog 4 times a year. I am not a consumer of printing services anymore. It's just the way the world has changed. So printing strikes me as one of the more competitive industries anyone could be in. Mm-hmm. And that just screams out to me, better be using a CRM to stay on top of everything.
Excellent. And Craig?
Well, I can't agree more with both Phillip and Rich, but really I see it the way Rich does. We're talking about an industry that's really going under a huge transformation throughout the entire industry, and really in this particular industry, a lot of long-standing customers, traditional customers, are actually now becoming competitors, if you will, because of looking at media basically as, well, you can print on paper, or you can print on signs, or you can print digitally, and you can print digitally online, you can print digitally on signs. So this is a whole new dynamic, and what ends up happening as these new forms of competition come in and new kinds of products and innovation, you see shifts in demand, you see new alternatives available, and this really has a big impact. But as to what Phillip was saying, printing is actually a type of a manufacturing, but even through the traditional processes, there's been a ton of relationships to manage, a lot of people involved in the different sales opportunities. So keeping track of those different relationships and keeping track of exactly the things that the customers are needing and what they're trying to buy, and then you've got all the logistics that go into bringing it all together to deliver a product that makes a customer successful. Well, that's where CRM as a tool and a technology comes into play, but also as a strategy about how do you manage that and how do you make your customers successful. Because ultimately, that's why people are buying from you, is because you're going to create value by helping them achieve success.
Yeah, absolutely. So are sales processes in the printing industry generally well defined? And if so, does this make it easier to migrate a salespeople to a CRM? And Rich, when any consulting you've done with the printing industry, have you found that their sales processes are well defined?
Not on the surface, no, because many sales organizations still evolve in an ad hoc manner, and
Mm-hmm.
but the underlying problems are the same. So it's easy to step back and take a fresh look at things and define the processes that should be in place.
Right. And Phillip, given that you run a sales organization in the printing industry, have you have you generally found that sales processes are well defined, or is it well defined in your organization, but you've seen other ones where it's less so?
Well, I've only worked in the quick print industry before, so I can only speak to that, but I'm fairly sure that the answer is no. They're not fairly well defined, except for the franchise operations, not just a Sir Speedy, but all of the others, because they just, due to the nature of their business model, they have to have that fairly well defined. So the answer is no. I don't think they're defined, and I don't know if it makes things simpler or not for that reason. But the ease of migration, if you will, I think I was thinking about that earlier today. You almost have to define what you mean by ease of migration from what. It's directly related to the sales rep's prior experience with CRMs and other bits of technology, how tech savvy they are, how deeply they've incorporated technology and gadgets into their lives, and how open they are to learning new things and staying current with tech changes. I think we'll get into this also a little deeper here in just another question or two. But you've got to have the perfect persona of today's sales rep candidate. Doesn't look anything, to my mind, like it did 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah, so it's a big change in terms of the skill set that you require in order for someone to be successful.
Exactly. They have to be, yes, the skill set and the attitude, the willingness to, if they don't already know about CRMs and technology and whatnot, if they're not familiar with it, they have to be willing to learn. And there you go.
Yeah, and Craig, what have you seen in terms of defined sales processes in the printing industry?
Well, from my personal experiences, I've got a few. One is a manufacturer they're a packaging manufacturer, if you will. They print corrugated products, shipping containers, and product, printing on products that go on retail shelves, like even Kraft macaroni and cheese, and the packaging that goes on that. And another experience was with a publicly traded company that they're in document management and print on demand for the automotive industry. They actually, like Ford Motor Company, if you have an old Ford and you want to get a manual for this old Ford, you go to this company and they'll print it up and deliver it to you. So I've seen some of these things, and the sales forces in those companies, from their traditional standpoint, yeah, they've got some decent processes. They understand who their customers are going to be and what they're going to be doing. But in this company, in this industry, in this time where we're undergoing this transformation, a lot of these sales processes are in flux. And I think there's a lot of other companies that, they kind of fly by the seat of their pants, never really defined clearly, here's how we get from point A to point B, because opportunities are different. But I'm going to go back to the digital transformation for just a second and the changing workforce, because as these younger people are coming up, they expect technology tools to enable them and empower them to do the things that they need to do and to do it more easily. So, moving forward, and especially in this time, I think even companies that have well-defined processes are going to see those processes in a state of flux and change as the industry transforms. And so it's going to be companies that adopt the tools that enable agility, that enable rapid adoption. Those are the kinds of companies I think that are going to get placed in a strategic position where they can actually grow and prosper.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with everything said. I think agility is critical, and I do think you're not going to be able to live without a good CRM in the future, and you're going to have to be that much more aligned with your customer and have your sales processes aligned with their buying processes. We've kind of touched on this, and Craig, you just mentioned it again, the challenges. Phillip, what do you see in terms of any unique challenges facing sales teams in the printing industry? I mean, obviously, it's an industry that's going through tremendous changes.
Right.
So what are some of the challenges?
Well, I like all of these questions because it's like a giant Venn diagram. They all overlap just a little bit, but there's different angles here. So this is good. The unique challenges have been and will continue to be the shift in the past 20 years from the old offset process printing is what we do and a little bit of copy work to a marketing services provider model. And that has drastically steepened the product and service learning curve for a new rep. When I started, I had to learn what offset printing was, how to spell PMS, where the copy machine was, and there's the front door, get going. And now the list is just ridiculously long of the different products and services that we offer. And it's a totally different mindset. Now, the print shop model, while it's declined, it had its, what's the word I'm looking for? The weak went out of business and the strong consolidate. Consolidation is what I'm looking for. But it had its big consolidation, 8-10 years ago. It'll still continue. The weaker or old, I shouldn't say weaker, but the older print shop model is going to continue to decline slowly. And the old school reps, they're going to continue to go the way of the dinosaur. And also another thing, as far as a unique challenge, just kind of shift gears, is and I hope the boss is not listening, but print shop owners with no sales backgrounds trying to play sales manager. Now, I'm not beating anybody up, but when you don't have any experience in a certain subject, it's hard to manage that. And so, the marketing services provider model is going to continue to increase its footprint. It's going to require a new breed of tech-savvy people, and the print shop owners are going to have to do something to try and keep up with that in order to manage it, because it's different. It's different now when I try and train somebody to do what we've done versus train them 10, 15 years ago. It doesn't work as fast. It works differently, and there's a whole new mindset. So I think, John, what you all do as far as the education that you provide, the ebooks and whatnot, and the webinars and so forth, a lot of which, if not most of it, is aimed at education of sales management people, as far as what to look for, what to expect, different types of metrics and so forth. So there's a need for a third party to train print shop owners that want to manage but don't know what to look for.
So I couldn't agree more. So Rich, when you look at this issue of moving from a very well-defined product sale into a much more complex services sale, what are some of the challenges that face a sales team and as Phillip said, particularly sales managers?
Well, just juggling all of the issues that they have to keep track of day to day. And even the best salespeople fall into a trap of knowing what they should be doing and then not always doing it because of putting out fires or some other problem that comes up. And that's where the CRM can really have an impact to keep people focused and moving forward.
So you would say that it's critical that they have that technology or that CRM in place to keep them, as you say, organized, focused, given the increasing complexity of what they're trying to sell.
Yes.
And what about you, Craig? What other challenges do you see facing sales teams in the printing industry?
Well, I definitely agree with Phillip that there's a lot of things about training, especially it's not just training; it's even the ongoing coaching, especially when you're in a state of ongoing flux. right? Because those changes come around rapidly. Systems, processes, they change. And all of this is in response to shifts in the market, shifts in demand, and where things are going, and organizations trying to be responsive. So that creates an environment of chaos. So now I go to what Rich was talking about, and he's right on target. In an environment of chaos, tools that can bring order in chaos are going to help folks keep focused on the things that are most important at that moment in time, and keep things moving forward. Because ultimately, every sales organization, their number one primary job is generating revenue, right? So we have to empower them to do that job and do it well. Just like in printing, companies have invested big dollars into the best technology to streamline operations and produce the best output, to take, one campaign and integrate it and produce it across various media platforms. All right. And they've invested a lot of dollars in that. Well, now we need to take that investment and turn it into true ROI for the organization. And the only way to do that is to actually get the sale. So I think there's going to be this increasing focus on redefining what value is,
right,
and how you deliver that value. And value, I think, is going to be redefined and based on solutions, not just products, but overall solutions, and how those solutions impact a customer success. And it's going to be around simplicity, speed, the risk, but in general, the overall impact on success, on the customer's success. And Craig, the CRM tools, they absolutely are imperative to help sales organizations do that.
Excellent. And just following on a segue, additional challenges ahead. I mean, this is, as we said, this is an industry that's in flux. I remember, I think it's even maybe 10 years ago, I visited one of the major printing manufacturer of printer, multifunctional printing machines, global company, global name. And the CEO said that year was the first year since the invention of the printing press that less paper had been produced, and actually it started to go backwards. So for a long time now, obviously, printing has been going through huge structural changes. So what other challenges do you see ahead, both for the printing industry and for, in many ways, any organization that's in a so-called kind of legacy industry that's going through a lot of modernization or changes? And maybe Rich, you want to start with that?
Well, you got to jump on these things and move forward. The CRM tools are just that, a tool. And as these legacy industries, as people have other choices, they just are overwhelmed with choices. So you've just got to tackle these other tools to help you stay on top of your business.
Yes. So in many ways, what you're saying is that you have to be that much more targeted. You have to be that much more on top of things so that you can differentiate. I mean, especially, I think you're right, Rich. People have so many choices now. I think customers or prospects, consumers are sometimes overwhelmed by the choice and they end up paralyzed, right?
Right.
Right. How about you, Craig? Would you see any other additional challenges for printing or for legacy industries like printing?
Well, the digital transformation is sweeping the globe, really, across all different kinds of industries. I mean, here's an example. Everybody has probably heard stories about Uber. Mm-hmm. Well, how has technology changed transportation in general? Throughout the time of the Industrial Revolution, we went from horses to trains, and then, trains to automobiles, and automobiles to airplane, and so on. But even in cab rides, cabs used to be a certain way. Now you get on your phone and, hey, it's there to pick you up. So we're seeing that transformation everywhere. Now, with companies like printing. Here's the interesting thing. Digital experiences are becoming critical as part of the integrated marketing campaigns that traditional printing customers have always wanted. So, I think there's one global brand that's recognizable, invented something I think called clickable paper, that's kind of transforming some things. And the move of the Internet of Things and AI and the shift towards mobile apps and so on, all of these things are going to become part of that integrated marketing experience. And these present the opportunities. So basically, if you're in a legacy industry, you're in a place where you're seeing your demand decline and shift towards alternatives, and you're seeing shrinking margins because of increased competition, and things that seem like they may go the way of the dinosaur. Well, the answer is you have to look at where the market is shifting, look at those opportunities, and start developing the strategy of how you're going to embrace those opportunities to chase them down, and then incorporate them into your business and your operations so that you can adapt and change with the market. CRM tools can help you do that. And if they're hard to change and inflexible, they can actually hinder you in that process.
Mm-hmm.
So,
absolutely.
that's kind of my take.
Yeah, and Phillip, as you look out there with your binoculars to the future, what other additional challenges do you see ahead as you try to get? Yeah, I was going to say, as you try to get your sales organization moving to the next level.
Next level, I'm just trying to get them to show up on time. Come on, John. Greg, you mentioned flux a little while ago, and I'm glad to hear that you got flux, because I got a load of it down here too. We got plenty of flux. But additional challenges, I've got two things here that I wrote down. One is the advancing technology, as Craig just mentioned, on all fronts, with the increased requirement for tech-savvy sales rep candidates, which is going to render the order takers obsolete. And number two is the integration of everything, phrase I just coined, which is one database to rule them all. It's already requiring sales reps to be not only willing to use a CRM system and other digital systems that integrate with it, but to enthusiastically embrace it and understand how to squeeze additional sales out of it, which means they have to devote time and energy to it and study the thing. And that is very difficult when you're trying to get dinosaurs to learn new tricks. It's almost impossible for those folks, but for those of us, I mean, I could be a dinosaur if I wanted to be, but I don't want to get old. I want to stay. I got to keep up with my kids, for crying out loud. So stay up on technology for work, for home. You've just got to be there.
Yeah, well, if you want to stay up with your kids, Phillip, one of the things you've got to do is stop using vowels in anything you type in future.
That's right. Yeah. No vowels.
No vowels allowed. Well, interesting, and it just brings me. There's a question that came in, and I think it kind of ties to what we're talking about now, and that is, they're asking about, okay, how do you drive adoption from salespeople if we say that CRM is so important, and it obviously is, in organizing your sales process and making sure that you're on top of opportunities, and that you really understand, and you've got the reports, the metrics to keep you focused and on target. But how do you get people to adopt it, particularly in industries where maybe they've been a little slower to adopt sales technologies? Rich, do you want to have a go at that quickly?
Well, sure. My suggestion is to start with the mobile version of a CRM solution. All of the better CRM solutions out there these days have excellent mobile clients or mobile versions. And my wife is a dinosaur, but she learned to use her smartphone, and she does a little bit more with it every day. And if I were getting started people can be intimidated when you put them down in front of a computer screen, but everybody's carrying around a cell phone these days, and they're accessing it for all kinds of different things. So I would start people with the mobile client and probably never even look at the back end client. Let the management deal with that. So that'd be my first suggestion.
And what about you, Craig? Quickly, how would you do it? And obviously, just as a quick advertorial here, Pipeliner CRM does have one of the best mobile apps on the market.
Yes, actually, Rich is right on track. I was reading a research report the other day. I think it was by Pew. It was about the internet turning 25 years old. And in the USA, I mean, I know we're speaking to a global audience here, but at least in the USA, 90%, over 90% of people own a smartphone. And that's not surprising, right? But the most interesting thing to me was that 67% of those people actually consider their mobile device their primary device for accessing the internet. And so, as we've talked about, embracing new salespeople and new younger generations. I mean, come on, we're talking about folks here really just under the age of 50. They're a mobile first type of generation. So mobile sales tools are definitely key to adoption. But it goes beyond just that. I mean, the CRM tool, what really drives the adoption is for the salesperson to see that it is actually a tool that helps them be more effective, right? It helps them achieve their job of generating revenue. And, from my experience, a lot of salespeople are coin operated, and when their compensation plans are usually tied to that productivity. So when they start, if they view the CRM system and it becomes this hassle for them to put in data and for them to take advantage of advancing the sale to close and hitting their quotas and doing the things they need to do, then there's a resistance to using it. But when it's implemented and the tool itself guides them through the process, helps them to focus on what they need to do right now to take this from point A to point B to point C, those tools, they're a little easier to embrace. And if those tools are available to them wherever they are, when they have time or need to take care of something, it just helps drive that adoption. So simplicity is a key in that, but guiding them through the process, I think, is another important key. But they got to see the value.
Yeah, I absolutely agreed. And Phillip, so printing's obviously technology-based endeavor, but do sales teams use technology beyond the products and services? Like, are they? You mentioned that there's quite the challenge with migrating some maybe older reps into use of technology. I mean, what are you seeing? Are they using technology already, or are you trying to kind of push them towards technology adoption?
The latter. We have one dinosaur, and the rest of us are willing to utilize the system, some more than others. The way I understood the original question, and I think this is what you meant, how is technology incorporated into the entire selling process?
Exactly.
At the core, at the core of it is the CRM. It's just a brain. It's got, it's the core database, and connected to that is their smartphone with a mobile app. And by the way, Rich, I love that idea, starting with the mobile version. Start small and you can always add to it. That's beautiful. I'm going to steal that and tell the boss I came up with, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
That was beautiful. But then also connected to the CRM is the social media tools that Pipeliner makes available. Constant contact, we utilize that also. We have that connected to Pipeliner with sync apps. I use another marketing platform called GetResponse, but it's also linked to the CRM through another company called Zapier. And we utilize landing pages, and I'm trying to get more and more into this stuff. There's only one of me, and we have 3 full-time jobs, so it takes a little longer than I would like it to, but there's just a lot of tools out there, including full contact. We shoot pictures of business cards, and they're automatically put into the system, and it works really well. So there's a lot of tools, and everything's connected. everything's connected to everything else, and it all ends up in the CRM. That's the end game. So yes, it's there, and they're using it to the degree that the boss, the sales manager, makes it available to them as fast as he can.
Yeah, and you, Rich, what have you seen when you look at people in printing or in other legacy industries? Do you see them already starting to adopt and use technology in their sales processes or sales engagement, or is this still a kind of work in progress?
I think it's a work in progress. They need somebody to come along and really smack them in the side of the head to get them moving.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it takes a specific messy problem in the organization to get the ball rolling. And I think this would apply to many printing businesses.
Mhm.
But the one that comes to mind is this whole issue of producing complicated quotations. I'm sure that most printing sales folks have to be doing quotations all the time for their customers and keeping them straight. So this area of using technology to assist them there can be the lever that helps move things forward for a lot of these folks.
Good. And what about you, Craig? What have you seen?
Yeah, well, actually, I again agree with both of them, both Rich and Phillip. But I'm going to actually go to a particular story here. It's a client story that I've worked with, and back in the year 2000, okay, this client, I was part of a team that we helped them implement their first CRM system, and it was a higher end type technology back then. It was one of the top of the line systems. But this company is actually in the business forms printing space. And that's what they did. They created all kinds of paper-based forms, specialized forms. A lot of their clients were either in financial services, insurance, healthcare, and they even printed pads for restaurants and stuff to take guest check orders. So any kind of business form that you could think about, they would print it. Well, we helped them implement a CRM system, and they grew and grew and prospered. And they started building dealer networks and reseller channels that would sell their business forms. So they grew throughout the 2000s. But here, just about a year and a half ago, they came back, and I was, again, part of a team through kind of like the way printing is done today. You have many different players in the sales process. So as a team, we come and we started helping them with their digital transformation. And we, as to Phillip was saying, we started incorporating marketing technologies, digital technologies. They had the digital capability to transform from a lot of paper-based forms to digital-based forms, but we needed to empower the sales force and the sales channel to take that message out. There was training involved, but more importantly was also on the integrated marketing side of enabling the salespeople to not only understand, but market to the customers. So CRM was actually still at the backbone of this strategic shift over time. It enabled them to succeed early on, but when the demand for what they were doing traditionally started decreasing, the company started reinventing the way that it did things, looking at how to leverage its existing assets. What was its existing assets? Well, an established base of customers, an established dealer channel, and starting to leverage those in new and exciting ways using other technologies. So this definitely goes beyond just the standpoint of producing the finished product or service, but about actually how you market and sell that product and service and generating revenue. And technology in general and CRM overall is very important. As I think it was Phillip that said, CRM is essentially the core brain behind all of it. It's where all of the data is reposited. That's where it lives.
Right.
So, I mean, I think we've touched on a lot of this, and if there's, you can just add any other ideas that you have. But What are some of the challenges? And I think we've talked a lot about challenges, maybe we'll focus on the opportunities. So, as you implement CRM in the printing industry, and maybe Philip, if you want to kick off with this, when you have implemented and driven CRM in the printing industry, what are some of the great opportunities that you've seen come from that?
Opportunities. Well, my main focus in the last year and a half, 2 years with implementing this has just been to, and I am getting to your question, but it's been to shift us from the old way of doing it to the new model. And we're almost there. Not quite as far along as I wanted to be, but the opportunity, the largest opportunity, is simply to streamline the selling process and know what we're doing, and be able to have somebody in a position, myself, for example, that can know what's going on by looking it up instead of having to wait and chase down a rep and ask them what's the latest. But if we streamline the opportunities and can focus our energy and our assets, our resources where they need to be, that can only result in good things. That's the biggest opportunity. We're almost there. It'll be a little while, but once we get there, then I can drill down a little bit more and further define what opportunities, plural, should look like. And I think that's the best answer I can give you.
Yeah, so for you, it's really focus. It's bringing that focus so that you're focusing on the right opportunities, you're doing the right things, so you're saving time and energy and really going after the right prospects and customers.
That's the goal.
How about you, Craig? What do you see some of the opportunities for an industry like printing when they implement a CRM? What should they be looking for?
Well, this is definitely specific to printing, but it's actually going to apply to pretty much any organization that's in a market that's full of flux and undergoing a transformation, because that transformation is what creates opportunities. I mean, it's a source of challenges, but it creates the opportunity. And the opportunity actually is to reinvent yourself. The opportunity is to reinvent the way you look at value, how you communicate that value, and how you deliver the value. So, in printing in particular, we see the shift towards digital. Digital delivery is what I want to call it. So there's product innovations in active packaging and intelligent packaging. There's web to print and print on demand. But then there's other technology advantages that, as Philip was referring to, with integration tools like Zapier and I think it's PieSync and Sync Apps and a few of the others. But there's tons of marketing automation tools out there. Philip mentioned a couple of them. But bringing that value chain under control to where not only are you creating value, salespeople and marketing creating value in the process of finding and uncovering customers, but it's also about the mobile apps and delivering the messages through the mobile apps, building the communities. These are the way printing companies can actually start creating a greater value stream through the development of solutions that customers are wanting to buy, make it easy for them to buy, and make them successful. Now, how do you do that? Well, in some cases, I think it's easier to do through strategic partnerships and strategic alliances. But you can also use the CRM tool to gain intelligence in the market about what people are actually buying. If you're able to track all the different people and companies involved in an opportunity, you can see, oh, hey, they're going to this company for design. They're going to this company for their mobile app. They're going to here, for this need or that need. And that gives you the ability to start tapping into strategic partnerships, the ability to develop them with companies to offer that solution so that your customer can be your customer and you can give them greater value by being that one source.
Yeah, absolutely. And Rich, what do you see as some of the great opportunities for a solid implementation and adoption of CRM in an industry like printing?
I keep it simple. The biggest opportunity I see is peace of mind. Too many organizations make implementing a CRM project far more complicated than it needs to be. If they focus on the nuts and bolts issues, the people that get it, it's been my experience, and I've been doing this a while, I see them walking around with a little grin on their face all day long. And they're doing that because they know everything's under control. This person's got what they need. This person's got what they need. And their quota is not an issue because they're going to bust it. And so the biggest opportunity I see is that peace of mind that can pervade your whole team. And you'd be surprised at the productivity increase that just naturally flows from that.
Yeah, I love that, Rich, and I think that's I got to write that down. Is maybe our next marketing campaign is would you like to walk around all day with a permanent grin on your face? I think that's I love that. Okay, so I think we've talked a little bit about this too, but maybe quickly as we're bumping up towards the end of this, what impact have you seen? Maybe again, start with you, Philip. What impact have you seen on the bottom line by adopting CRM?
Well, I'll give you a 30,000-foot generic answer to that because I don't take care of the financials at the company here, and we're bringing him along too. So, and he's very much in the ballpark, but I don't have privy to the numbers, so I can't tie it directly. But I know that if we cut out the fat, the process is the same. The end game is the same. We're looking to identify, qualify, focus, develop a relationship, and close and develop that new account. And if we put all our time into that, as opposed to the way we've done it in the past, from a lack of information, which is chase everybody and keep the ones that want to play. Now, there's always going to be a little of that, but we don't want a lot of that. If we can focus, it can only get better. If we're aimed at the right people, the right targeted prospects, the right qualifications, the right demographics, then our numbers have to get better. And that's where we are right now. Ask me again in another year, and I'll have a better answer than that. But
I will indeed.
I know it's good.
And you, Craig, just quickly, where have you seen CRM make a real impact to the bottom line in printing or other legacy industries?
Yeah. Okay. Well, again, see, in printing, you get a lot of different kinds of companies, right? There's a lot of different types of printing and such that's been going on. So to try to be generic and get across all of them, I think one of the key contributors of CRM and its impact to the bottom line of these companies, it is in managing relationships. It is in being able to manage the different day-to-day sales activities. But even more importantly, it's about collecting the data to be able to have meaningful reporting and meaningful forecasting. Now, with forecasting, it's important to all companies really to be able to project their revenue. But when it comes to more of a manufacturing focused kind of company, like, a Georgia Pacific or one of these others that, are really into the manufacturing process and printing, for them, forecasting is even more critical because it's literally predicting the demand for their production system, and that drives production scheduling, which then drives ordering in the supply chain. It even affects capacity planning and ultimately capital investment. So CRM is still at the heart and the core because sales is on the front side. So I'm just going to go back to, again, having the right tools and having them easy to use for salespeople, having them implemented in a way that adds value and helps salespeople do their job, which is generate revenue. Well, that's the thing that actually impacts the bottom line the most.
And you, Rich, where have you seen significant impact, or how have you seen significant impact to the bottom line?
Well, I tried to think about this, and I kept coming back to one printer salesman I knew, still know, from Dallas, in fact. And his name was Pat Sullivan. And he lived next door to an IBM systems engineer. and he was struggling with all of the issues that we were been talking about today, and they came up with a product called Act. So it certainly influenced his life.
Absolutely, and obviously things have gone from there. Okay, so to wrap up, just a quick one-liners from all of you on any other insights you just want to share with the attendees today and all the other people who are going to access this recording afterwards. And maybe just start with you, Rich. Any last insight you want to share?
Well, yeah, a simple one, I think. I know people who have spent thousands and thousands of dollars trying to with consultants to decide what's better, Salesforce or Microsoft CRM, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And my advice is almost that I don't like Salesforce, but I'll put that on the side, that it almost doesn't make any difference. The real challenge is to have the self-discipline to follow through with your project.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important, and I think that's that's one thing we hear all the time. Obviously, from our customers, it's the ones that are really successful are the ones who have that discipline to follow through, implement properly, do the foundational work, and then roll it out and reinforce afterwards. And you, Craig, quickly, what's some last insights you have?
Well, again, I'm going to go all the way back to, I came up through the technology space and then into accounting operations, then into CRM consulting, worked with a lot of companies trying to help them implement CRM in different ways. And I totally agree with Rich that it is not, the tools are important, and moving forward with just the pace of change that's in the world today, and especially this industry, agility is going to be critical. Not to have tools that are going to box you in, but actually have tools that can quickly adapt to changes, that you can easily adapt to change. But those tools that will help salespeople adopt them easier. The mobile world is the world of the future in the younger generation. So mobile clients are going to be really important to have, ones that help people. But in the end, it is still about seeing it through. Mm-hmm. And it's a never finished story. It's always going to be changing. It's always going to be in flux. So ongoing training, ongoing coaching, tools that help you actually implement ongoing training, ongoing coaching, ongoing guided selling, if you will. These are the kinds of tools that are like the power tools rather than the manual screwdriver. Yeah, so that would be my advice, is to seek those things out.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with what you said, particularly about the fact that it's never ending and it's dynamic, which is one of the reasons, one of the fundamentals of Pipeline or CRM is that it's easy to change, say, the sales process or other things in the system, because your sales process is never set in stone because buyers change. So you can define your sales process today, and in 6 months' time, you could have to modify it just because there's some buying trend that's changing. And finally, Philip, what's some last insight you have?
You have two choices. One is to do nothing and continue to lose market share slowly, the old business model way, or number two, spend some money on implementation and training and do things the way the market is demanding they be done now.
Excellent. Okay, well, I'm just sticking with you, Philip. Before we go, this has been a fascinating discussion. How can people find out more about you, contact you?
They can send me an email at pcrum@SirSpeedyMidway, just like it sounds.com.
Excellent. And you, Rich?
Just Google Rich Bohn. I'll come up.
You will indeed. You'll find plenty about Rich. Rich has been around a long time and has got a lot of a huge in-depth expertise. And how about you, Craig? How can people contact you?
Well, I'd prefer really just an email. Craig W. at custdriven.com, CRAIGW at custdriven.com. Stands for customer driven. And that's because no two customers are the same.
Excellent. Couldn't agree more. Okay, again, this has been the webinar about CRM and the printing industry, brought to you by Pipeliner CRM, which actually does a lot of business in the printing industry. And Phillip, who is kind enough to be one of our panelists, is also a customer of ours. So we're delighted that he could join us today. Also brought to you by SalesPOP Online Sales Magazine. This is a free online resource with the best thought leadership in the industry in multiple formats, blogs, videos, infographics, you name it. But this is where you'll find the information and the kind of training materials and insights that the guys were talking about earlier to help you make the transition into the modern selling world. So again, my name is John Golden from Pipeliner CRM and SalesPOP Online Sales Magazine. Thanking Craig, Phillip, and Rich for joining us today for this great conversation, and we'll see you for another panel discussion very soon. Thank you, and bye now. Bye, everyone.